Like, comment, subscribe inside YouTube's chaotic rise to world domination by Mark Bergen, a tech business reporter who interviewed over 300 people, of which 160 of them were YouTube and Google employees or former employees, some on the record, some off the record. This does give the kind of the public facing story of YouTube, which I think if you've been around enough, you can sort of you'll have heard of things like the early days where getting sued by places like via big media companies like Viacom because of copyright violation, struggles with pornography, and then stuff like the adpocalypse, where advertisers were starting to boycott the site because of all the discovery of lots of really horrendous videos that their big ads were getting placed next to, which led to YouTube's sort of drive to making YouTube a more ad-friendly place and working on that. So yeah, we get this, we get that, we get PewDiePie's various eruptions, we get Logan Paul, we get various all the kind of the hate groups, the bizarre children's videos, terrorist hate groups, all that stuff gets brought up. I mean, the book actually starts. The prologue of the book is talking about the shooter at the Christchurch Mosque in New Zealand. So we get all of that, but it is the inside story in a way as well, inside business story, where you get a little bit of a glimpse into YouTube, which is not a very open company. And the people who quickly bought up YouTube after it got founded in 2005, Google, Alphabet, are this is a large giant corporation that has a very tight hold on its publicity, doesn't really let people in. There's a lot of NDAs saying what they can say. I mean, I don't think that there's shocking revelations in here. YouTube is in the ad selling business. Coming out of the tech bubble popping and collapsing, we've had the rise of these giant companies that have kind of gotten the monopoly on stuff. Google having a de facto monopoly on search, and YouTube having a de facto monopoly on long form video, and trying to get into the shorts business as we're seeing now. That these monopolistic companies want to sort of operate as freely as they can. They want to make sure that their advertisers are happy, that this is a friendly place for advertisers. That seems to be the big thing that unsurprisingly motivates a place like YouTube. It is so gigantic that no matter how big of a creator you are, YouTube, that's really missing the point. As people say, like, oh, how can they neglect their huge creators so much? It's like, well, because it's just like it's one tiny little program in this massive empire. You have to balance that out because it is such a huge world spanning company. Any decision it makes, however minor, has giant ripple effects, and this often comes up for creators complaints over the algorithm of what gets favored. Is it long videos? Is it short videos? It's viewer retention, all these different things, and it changes with the culture. I mean, I think the whole shift now to kind of shorts has been one of these things. Of before that, it was like, oh, you want to make your videos over 10 minutes. Now it's like, no, you're making these tiny little bite-sized things, and YouTube is trying to figure out how to make that pay. I mean, a big part of the YouTube's business success has been like, we're actually going to pay creators to do this. I don't think Bergen goes into it in the book, but this kind of model of that the users on a site are also the content creators is one of these things that came out of something like GeoCities. They didn't pay anybody back then, but this kind of idea was then taken forward by places like YouTube, Facebook, and stuff like that. YouTube is sort of unique in the fact that you get to a certain level, you can pay for it. And I mean, it's interesting that if you're ever frustrated over, oh, I'm a tiny creator and I don't get paid for what I do, you only have to read a book like this to find out, oh, there's a reason why that's happened. It's because of a very kind of fairly nasty history of people popping up with little channels with horrible content, uh, getting paid for it, and then kind of drifting off into the night. YouTube's tried to kind of clamp down, and I mean, it's again that this is stuff like this kind of caused the adpocalypse in a way of we need to kind of clamp down on stuff like that. Now, this is definitely a business book. It's which is like it's valuable as that as a business book, but you can't help but think that like this is a great book to start more of a conversation to examine more about YouTube as a monopoly and regulation. Like who should regulate it? Do we want government to regulate it? Various governments have imposed things on YouTube. Sometimes YouTube has acceded to them. Other times it hasn't. I can't help but think as a Canadian, it's like, well, it's going to be like an American government is going to lay down the law, and then it's probably going to trickle out to all us little satellite countries outside of what happens. Though something like maybe the EU or or India or giant markets like that will also have an effect. And whether this will just cause YouTube to kind of bifurcate into different kind of experiences. If you're in India, it's going to be one way. If you're in Russia, it's another way. If you're in Canada, where I am, it's going to be a different experience. I mean, we've had some stuff like that come forward in Canadian government of trying to pass regulations on internet content, YouTube content, and I guess we're going to see exactly how that shakes down and how YouTube will react to that. And at the end of the day, it's a corporation, and they're driving focus, whether there's good-hearted people in the company, which definitely this book shows. There's people who are trying to do good stuff. Some people who've really kind of given up and have left and are talked to Bergen about it, who will point out just all the kind of the real lacking stuff, the massive disinformation that comes from places like YouTube and Google and Facebook, and the massive amounts of money that companies like this do pour into places like Washington to try and make sure that they aren't regulated. They're paying to for their corporate freedom to do what they want, which isn't necessarily what we should want as citizens. And it's one of these books that you look at it and it's like, oh yes, I'm a user, I'm a creator, but also I'm a citizen, and this stuff like this should concern me. There's a fascinating thing in here about the AI, the use of AI in here, the algorithm, and kind of questions as to how much YouTube knows what's going on with that algorithm. Like, they'll make changes to the algorithm. The algorithm kind of learns on its own and makes decisions that can sometimes it's like, oh, how did the computer come to that conclusion out of these little parameters that we tweaked it with, and also that. But I think there's also too much of a thing of saying like, well, oh, it's the algorithm that like is discriminating against the LGBTQ plus, world. It's like, well, no, that there's actual people who put instructions in there and their own biases and come in there. And sometimes it's not even their own biases, but there's the biases of the advertisers that they're going for. So it's one of these. YouTube has used a lot of their engineering solutions to kind of hide behind and say, oh, it's the algorithm, we're working on it. It's like, you're not taking they're not taking responsibility for it, because they're a big monopoly and they don't have to take it, and they don't have to listen to other people. It's also a book that makes me think. Bergen doesn't go into this again. There's so much stuff that, like, I think you read this book as somebody who's on YouTube in any capacity, and you just go off. Your mind goes off in different directions. But sort of the future of YouTube is a geezily old company. It founded in 2005. It's gonna three more years, and it'll be a 20-year-old company, which is like ancient in the internet kind of thing. But it's like that's hardly an eye blink. And for everyone says like, oh, it's world domination and it's gonna last forever. You also do get that sense of the chaoticness of YouTube scrambling, as much as something as big as this can scramble to meet whatever the market needs are. And I can't help but thinking like, well, at some point the market needs are going to flip, and YouTube's just going to keep on going. And is if it's a super tanker, it will sink, or it will break up into fragment up into a bunch of pieces, perhaps get scooped up by somebody else. I know that Mark Zuckerberg is betting Facebook, who he can see is sort of, we've hit the plateau. We're trying to jump to the next big thing. The metaverse, he thinks, is the next best thing, is what he's gambling all his chips on, it seems. And where will that leave something like YouTube? Post that, will this be seen as antiquated as something like GeoCities, an old HTML website, websites? That kind of, where will the future be? Is all stuff that came up reading this book. So you may know all the kind of the YouTube stuff. It's kind of useful to look at this and kind of go, oh, this is why YouTube is never going to respond to me. It's always going to be a computer that is going to respond to me, unless I'm at the very tippy top, or I can make as much as if I can make as much of a thing. And even then, if you're not a major advertiser, group of advertisers pulling out, will the super tanker listen to you, or will the super tanker just keep on going? I really enjoy YouTube. This is not coming from somebody. Obviously, I spend a ton of my time here, but you see the limitations of trying to kind of making money off of outrage, making money off of our worst instincts, but but also there being all the good stuff here as well. I mean, I think Bergen doesn't go in. He mentions that like YouTube's big goal is to try and get as much watch hours as television. So there was all this. I can fully remember the amusing yourself to death in front of the television kind of hysteria of the time, which, now that we have new media to complain about, that's the one we're worried that this is going to destroy mankind, or humankind. Let's go with humankind. Maybe just the men. That would be, there definitely is, definitely. Can we talk about men? There's some trouble with men. Yeah, okay. I'm going off here. But yeah, just like, that is the other thing to consider here, is that it's like, okay, it's another way of amusing ourselves to death, but is it any different than, man, Grok is telling us all these stories and we're not getting enough hunting done each day? I don't know. Those are my thoughts on like, comment, and subscribe, careening around, having lots of fun on YouTube. All right. I've been Jay. Don't like, don't comment, don't subscribe. I don't care. Actually, those words are quoted from one of the more reprehensible Canadians who is banned off of this site. And I won't even say his name. All right. More videos later.